Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kurtivada. In this video, we will learn how to inject one standalone into modular or modular into standalone components. I have discussed about standalone components in my Angular 15 features and also a separate video for standalone components. I'll provide the link in the description. Please watch that for better understanding. In this video, what are the different scenarios we'll cover? Let's see that. So let me go to the next slide. Here we have four scenarios: injecting standalone into modular component. That means you have a modular component and you have a standalone component. Now, how can I inject this particular standalone component into modular component? Let's see this first. So let me go to the Visual Studio Code, and here now what I want to do is I have a modular component. If you see here, we have a modular component called as app component. Why I am saying app component as a modular component? Because if you go to the app module, it is registered in the app module, and that is the reason I am saying this app component as a modular component. Now, how to create a particular standalone component? Let me go to the next terminal and create a standalone component. Ng generate component, and the component name is child standalone. And to create a standalone component, we have an option called as hyphen hyphen stand alone and hit enter. Now I have created a component that is standalone component. And now I want to inject this standalone component in my modular component, that is app component. So let me go to the app.html, and here what I want to do is app hyphen child hyphen standalone, because this is a selector which is created for us in standalone component, and this is a selector. If you see, we got an option called as standalone true. Why? Because whenever we are creating a component, we gave an option called as hyphen hyphen standalone. And if you see here, we got an error. Why? And what is the error? If you go down, app child standalone is an Angular component, then verify it is a part of this module, because we are using inside our app component. And whenever you are using inside the app component, it should be registered in that module. That means app component is registered in app module. So it will check in this module whether that particular standalone component exists or not. Previously, we used it to import or inject our component inside our declarations. But now we are creating a standalone component and we are trying to use that standalone in our module. So instead of using inside the declaration component, whatever the standalone components you have, you can put it inside your imports so that it will act itself as a module. Now I can make it as child standalone component and save this. Now if you see here, it is compiled successfully and I'm able to see some data of that child standalone component. So this is our first scenario. We have successfully injected our particular standalone component into modular component. So hope you are clear with this. And now let me revert all this code. For the second scenario, let me revert all this code and let me go to the second scenario. What is the second scenario? Injecting modular component into standalone component. So I need to create a modular component, and that modular component I should be able to inject into my standalone component. For that sake, let me go and create a standalone component again. So let me hit enter, and this is my child standalone component. And now inside this, I want to inject one modular component. Let me go and create a modular component. For doing that, I'll just go and create child modular, and I'm not giving an option standalone. Let me hit enter. So it will create a modular component. And here this modular component have app module.ts. If you see here, child modular component has been imported and injected in the declarations of a module. So it comes under the modular component. Now, if I want to use this modular component inside your child standalone component, let me go to the child standalone HTML I want to use here. So I don't want to use anything here and anything here. And let me use a child modular.ts. If you copy this modular selector and put it inside a standalone, what would be the problem? Let's see that. And close this, save. And if you go to the node and also inject this standalone in my app.component.html, that means app hyphen child hyphen stand alone, and save this. Now you can see some problem here. Apps child standalone is a web component. Why this is giving the problem? Because we have to inject as per our first scenario. So let me inject child standalone component and save this. Now you are seeing one more error. it is related to app child modular. So if app child modular is an Angular component, then verify it, it is included in the imports of this component. So what he is telling, if it is an Angular component, it has to be imported in your child standalone component. Let me go to the child standalone component.ts, and here let me go to the imports and put it over here. That is nothing but child modular component, and save this. If you see, again we got one more error. The component child modular appears in the imports, but it is not a standalone. We are putting inside the imports, but imports will accept either a standalone or a module. So we cannot use this child modular component directly. How we can do this? So instead of directly importing here, what we can do is we have to create a shared module. So let me use a module ng generate module, and it should be something like shared module, and let me hit enter. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a shared module for this, and here what I'll do is I'll just import the particular modular component here. So child modular component, and then I'll use inside my exports where it is child modular component, and save this. Now this component is registered in two places. So that's why let me go to the app.module.ts and remove from here, because a component should be registered either in one of the module only. Let me remove this. And now my shared module can be imported in the modules of standalone component, because imports can accept module or a standalone component. So here I'm using a shared module, and let me save this. If you see here, it is compiled successfully, and go here, you can see child standalone component and child modular component. That means I'm able to achieve my second scenario, injecting a modular component into styled component. Let me revise this point. Whenever you have a modular component, it should be inside a module, and that module should export the component, and that module can be injected in your imports of standalone component. If you go to the standalone component, I have imported the shared module, and this shared module have an export of the modular component. This way we can use our modular component into a standalone component. Let me close this again. Let me go to the third scenario, injecting standalone into standalone. That means I have already one standalone. Let me create the second standalone component. Ng generate child to standalone, and give an option hyphen hyphen standalone. So I have created one more standalone component, but here I didn't give the component, and let me hit enter. So again, it created one more component. Now I want to inject one standalone into another standalone. Let me open standalone component ts, and child standalone component.html. This is my first standalone component, and let me use child2 standalone.ts and child2 standalone.html. So these are my four files which need to be included. Now what I want to do, I want to inject this second component. That means this app child2 standalone component into my first standalone component. Let me use here and save this and go to the node. You will be getting one error. What is the error? If this is an Angular component, then verify it is included in the component imports of this component. So as we know, we are having a import statement, and we want to inject either of the one module or a standalone component. The second component which we want to inject is a standalone component. So no need to create any shared module. Just use child2 standalone component and save this. If you see here, it is compiled successfully, and if you go here, you can see app child2 standalone component. Child2 standalone component works. That means I'm able to inject one standalone component into another standalone component. Let me revise this point. Whenever you want to inject one standalone component into another standalone component, then it is our responsibility to go to the imports of the parent standalone component and inject your another child standalone component. That's how we can use one standalone component into another standalone component. So the last point is bootstrapping entire application into standalone component. So here, if you see, we can bootstrap everything at main.ts, and let me first close all the files and let me go to main.ts. If you see, we are bootstrapping the module. We are not bootstrapping a particular component. So how can we do this? Instead of bootstrapping a module, what I can do is I can use Bootstrap application of I need to pass a root component. My root component is app component now. And let me save this. But you will be seeing one problem here. Let me quit this and then run ngserve and hit enter because I am changing the main.ts. If you change main.ts, it is our responsibility to change like this. And if you go to the browser, nothing is displayed. Let me inspect this and go to the console. Yeah, if you see here, app component is not marked as a standalone component. Whenever you are using a modular component, it is checking for the module, and inside the module, it will check the bootstrap component. If you go to app module, then it will check this app component as a bootstrap component. If you have this bootstrap component, then automatically this bootstrap component will be triggered. But this is depending on your module. Now, after getting with the standalone components, no need to do this. Just go to your app component and mark it as standalone true, whereas it should use an imports where that imports should contain some values that is related to the common module, which is always used by any of the component. Let me save this. And if you see here, app component is a standalone and can't be declared in the ng module. So let me go to the ng modular component. That means here, and remove this because only one declaration should be there, and that declaration should not have a standalone component. Let me save this and see here we got one more problem, that is nothing but an app component. So bootstrapping this of app component can also be removed. Let me save this, and here we got one another error, that is app child standalone is not a known element. That means the standalone component should be declared in our app component itself. Now app component is a standalone component, so it is our responsibility to inject all our standalone components in our component decorator itself. Let me save this, and everything was successfully passed, and no need of using this app module now. Only the main.ts will target for your app component, and it will render your app component. In this app component, whatever the html you have, it will check all the standalone components are registered inside the imports of this at the rate component decorator or not, and then it will render accordingly. Let me go here and you can see child standalone works, modular works, and second standalone also worked. So now let me revise the last point, bootstrapping entire application into standalone component. Instead of using a module as a root component, we are just using bootstrap application and we are passing a component. And make sure the component whatever you are passing here, that should be a standalone component. If I go into the app component, now I made it as standalone component. How to make a particular component as a standalone component? By using its property called as standalone true, and all the dependencies which are required for this particular component should be injected in your imports. And if you have any standalone components, then it will be taking directly. If you have any modular component, then it has to be exported from the module and import it in the imports of this at the rate component. This way we can make our whole application as a standalone component application. So I have bootstrapped entire application as a standalone component. This is how we can inject one component into another component with all the different types of scenarios. Why I have explained all these scenarios? The only reason is standalone components came in Angular 15. But if you have a very big application which is started at Angular 10 or 11 or 12, you will be having modular components. And if you want to migrate them into our standalone component vision, then it is our responsibility to know how to inject different scenarios and different components of a modular as well as standalone components into each other, and how to make a communication between this. So this is our responsibility to know. Now your application can use both of them. The legacy applications can have the modular component, and the newer components which are created in Angular 15, you can make it as standalone component and you can merge them at any time. So it is a user friendly to use modular components as well as standalone components. But try to use more standalone components so that your application will be modular free, so that you cannot use modular in the future, and make it easy and simple to register all the modules which are required for that particular component. Hope this helps you a lot. of understanding the standalone components. I think it may be bit confused, but it gives a clarity if you see this video one or two times. I really request you to see this video one or two times so that you will get a more clear understanding of over the standalone and modular components. If you have any doubts over this video, please post in the comments. I'll try to explain you in another video, or if possible, I'll come on to live for the standalone components and we can discuss over it. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.